Good morning. I can see we have 17 participants so far, which is great. And we're just waiting for a few more to join. 19 now, that's great. Well, I'm really excited to be here this morning to talk to you about the teenage brain. And I have a little experience on this. So I did raise two young men who are now 19 and 24. So I have a little bit of experience and also working in schools for the past 30, this is my 30th year. Wow, working with teenagers all the way from, I guess we would say 10 years old. Well, now all the way from younger, but 10 years old all the way to 19. So it's really exciting to talk about this topic. So Mr. Rico, we'll wait a few more minutes before we get going. Is that what you want to do? Okay, that's great. So great weather today. It's so beautiful. I'm waiting for spring to show up, and I know that we have a holiday coming soon, so it's really nice. So, all right. Okay, I think, are we now at, I'm just going to check my time. We're now at 9:31, so I think we can get started on our webinar and talk to everyone. I just want to introduce myself. I know that I've met most parents, but I'm Teresa. I'm the primary principal at Verita, and as I said, I've raised two boys who've gone through the teenage years and the adolescence, and I've also been working with teens for over 30 years through teaching, coaching, working in special programs, working in career programs, university programs. So I'm really excited to be talking to you today. And so, Mr. Rico, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Rico. I'm the principal of secondary here. My background is primarily, I don't have any kids yet. I don't have any teenagers.
A dog.
Yeah, that's on the list. My background's working with teenagers. I work with them every day. A lot of experience with dealing with teenagers from an educational kind of perspective. So you'll get a nice effect from the more parent, but also education. But from me, which is really focused on teenagers today, right now, and what's going on with them and so forth. So yeah.
And the best part is we were all teenagers at one time, regardless of when that was. We were all teenagers, and if we can reflect back during this presentation on some of the things that we might have gone through and how it felt for us, if we can go all the way back, for some of us a long ways back, for some of us not so long ago, and just sort of really connect back to our teenage years and our adolescent years and really feel and remember how that felt for us. Even though things have changed, there's still a lot of the similarities that exist. So thank you. All right, I just put a little, I think I wanted to, so my grown teenagers, here's my grown teenagers. They're 2 meters tall, they're very big boys, they're very sweet. I always make them stand back to back to see who's the tallest every year. And the one on the left is my youngest one, Carter, and my oldest one, Cole, is on the right. So I just wanted to show proof that they actually will get through this and grow up to be adults and good people. So here we go. I think we have okay. So what we want you to do today is just really to take away some truths behind what it's really like for teenagers and what we're experiencing as parents. And then what is the motivation of teenage behavior and how, and then Rico's going to talk a little bit more about the growth and the development of the brain and how adolescents actually move through a progress. So here we go. I think we have to go to the next. Yeah, so we're going to do a poll, and the poll is just to ask you how familiar you are with the teenage brain functions. So what do you know? What information do you know? So if you can take the poll now, that would be great. And I'll let Mr. Rico will. I hope everyone's familiar with taking a poll. All you do is just click on the one that the answer that best suits you, that you're with. Very familiar, familiar, unfamiliar, and very unfamiliar. Meaning nothing, you don't know anything about the teenage brain. So I think you know a little bit. All right. Okay, so the poll results are familiar. That's great, because we've all been teenagers, so we have some familiar, very familiar. So a few people in our session today that probably could be helping us out a little bit with some of the information, and then we have a good 47% basically unfamiliar to very unfamiliar. So we're kind of half here. So we're going to hopefully teach you or give you some tools or help you with a better understanding today. That's our point. So thank you very much. All right. So basically, everything that we're presenting has been researched based on expert opinion and some research studies. At the bottom of this presentation, and you'll get a copy of our of the webinar, I did put a couple of extra resources that I can share out in the chat at the end, so you could actually go on and link on and get some more research and more expert information on the teenage brain. So, but just to know that things do change, the research is constantly changing. So we will find out new information over the next years. And so we're just here to kind of support you through the process now of your teenager or pending teenager. All right. So we're going to do a little section called Mythbusters. So we're going to ask you to poll, and we're going to have a section that says, is this true or false? And we're going to have a question, and we're going to go in and then dispel the myth or the truth or the false about the question. So here's what experts say right now about teens today. So here we go. There's a poll. So it says, teens are impulsive, true or false? Teens only care about themselves, true or false? So we want you to do the poll, interactive. And it's whatever you instinctually think. Okay. And do we have enough? Okay, we have 38 in the webinar now. So it's everyone, hopefully everyone's been able to vote, and we'll see how we've done on the myth or fact. Let's see what everyone says. Are you able to close it, Mr. Rico? Okay, what do we got? We have, okay, so teens are impulsive, true. Okay, 91%, and some false. Teens only care about themselves, false. Okay, let's see what the experts say on these topics. So the reasons teens are impulsive is because they're self-centered, caring only about themselves. We don't know. Let's just check it out. Let's see what the experts say. What's the next slide? So basically, I put up the research for you. The truth is that actually teens are impulsive. They are impulsive, but it's a function of brain development. It's not that they mean to be. And I remember my son in middle school, and he came to me and he said, Mom, this is so hard. You know, my friends do all these things, and middle school is just so hard. And he would tell me, and I'd say, baby, it's okay. You know, it's the brain. And I'd explain to him about his brain, and we actually looked at the anatomy of the brain, and I explained how the brain was functioning. And he said, okay, this is going to pass. This is my youngest son. And I said, yes, this will pass. But he was really caught up in all the, I guess, the drama of middle school. And he just really needed to know that this was going to be okay. And I had to really help him to go through that. So yeah, they're impulsive. If you look through it, the brain doesn't start maturing until your mid to late 20s. Now, the research says that generally female brain will mature quicker than the male brain, but still into your mid to late 20s is when your brain, it says teens may seem like they're lazy, but actually it's about sleep for teens. They're not actually lazy. And the rule is usually 9 3/4 hours for teens for sleeping, because they need the sleep for their brain development, and they need the sleep to recover for the next day. So when your child or your teen is impulsive or irritable or even depressed, you should be checking out how much sleep they're getting on a regular basis. The rule in my house was always 9 3/4 hours. I was very strict about sleep, and my boys, you know, they learned to live with that, because I was very much about getting enough sleep, so they weren't in a cranky mood. Thanks, Rico. So we know the answer to that question. So the next poll is, there's only a small window opportunity for brain growth in childhood and adolescence. So there's only a small window of opportunity for your brain to grow in childhood and adolescence. Is that true or false? So we'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that question. Don't think too hard, just your first answer that comes to mind. And we'll close it in 15 seconds. It's great. All right, we're going to close our poll, and let's see where we are. So false, right? And some people, and we have a few true. Okay, so it says false. Let's just check it out. Let's see what the experts say. So here's the question was, if we miss a critical window of opportunity between the ages of 3 and 6 or between 8 and 10, we have failed in our responsibilities, and the students will have missed or are destined for linguistic or cognitive mediocrity. Let's see what the answer says. That's the fact. It's not true. Fact is, the brain produces trillions of synapses. It's right here, and they grow. And when Mr. Rico is really going to talk about the brain and how we thin out some of these synapses as we get older. But the fact is that brain development occurs in gestation through the first years of postnatal life, but the brain is not set. yet, and through adolescence, there's still growth happening. So we haven't limited our child by not giving them everything they need. We should be really wary of these claims, and like what it says is that if we don't do for everything for our child now, they're not going to have the development to grow. I'm an adult, I'm still growing, I'm still learning, and I think all of you know that we all still learn and grow. There are certain opportunities when you're younger for growth in language, but basically we have a lifetime of learning to do. Thank you, Mr. Rico. So myth or fact, poll 3. Teens are better at reading facial expressions than adults. This is an interesting question. So what do you think? And we'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that. Teens are better at reading facial expressions than adults. So, you know, we have to give all those facial expressions to them. Let's see what happens. All right, another 15 seconds to answer. And then once we finish these myths or facts, we're definitely going to get into some looking at the brain in detail a little bit more and looking at some more research. So we'll just do about 3 more facts for you, myths and facts. All right, let's close that poll. Let's see what we have. So basically, I'm going to close my poll. There we go. And what was the reply? Sorry, I missed that one. It was mostly.
So we have 24%, sorry, 75% of you thinks this is true, and 25% of you thinks this is false.
Okay, let's look at the question again. The next slide will be our question. So teens are better. I don't know. Let's just check. So here we go. I'm just going to show a video. Hopefully, oh, Mr. Rico's going to show a video. Hopefully, we can just watch it for like less than a minute. See if you can recognize these emotions. See if you get it right. We'll have about 4 or 5 of them for you to look at. Next one. Very quick. All right. Happiness. All right. I think we're going to stop on that one. There we go. Thanks, Mr. Rico. So those are just some ideas to look at some. So what the answers are, and you know, there's a lot of research, and I put an article at the bottom. Basically, teens are better at reading teen faces than adult faces. So if I'm a teen, I can read my peers' faces better than I can read adult faces. So when we make a face at a teen, they don't always know exactly what our meaning is behind it, but they do know the meaning behind their own peers. So their own friends, they know that they're registered with that. It takes them longer because their brains, the development of their brain through the frontier, the prefrontal cortex is still growing and developing. So this center is still kind of making those pathways of what are those emotions that I'm seeing. With their peers, it seems to be easier. And I did do a little bit of research on that and read some really good research articles. So I'm hoping that makes sense. So when we do make a face of a child, they don't always get to read us. So we can't always assume that they're ignoring us. They don't always know what we're saying. And if you look at here, the parts of the brain that the child uses to read emotion is different than the adults, because adults were fully developed in the front prefrontal cortex, and adolescents and children are still looking at are still relying more on the amygdala, which is going to like develop better over time. So don't be too hard on your teens if they can't read your face. So here we go. Next question. Myth or fact? So it's important that as parents, we do more and give more to our children than we had growing up. So it's important that as a parent, you actually do more and give more to your child than what you had. So let's see if that's true or false. And we'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that question. I think we have one more fact, Mr. Rico, after this. Right, okay, great. All right, so let's close that poll and see where everybody's at. What did we say? Okay, so it's important as parents we do more and give more. Okay, so we have 68% saying true and 32% saying false. So let's just see what the experts say on that one. All right. And here's the question. And so let's go to the facts. So there's a little video we're going to watch, but I wanted to preface it first with the fact that there's a book called The Me, Me, Me Epidemic, and it was written in 2016. by Amy McCready. And if you're interested in buying this book, you can buy it on Amazon. I highly recommend it. I've read through quite a bit of it, and it has some really good information and some good parenting tips, and tips for myself as an educator. So here we go. We're going to watch this quick video, and it's based on her book. It's kind of a bit
I buy
fun.
those little toys in the checkout lane. It just keeps her from having a tantrum.
He only eats food that's the color beige, so that's what I give him, chicken nuggets, every single night.
She's forgotten her homework, and I stop what I'm doing and I drive it to school again.
I just broke down and bought him the iPhone.
Uh-oh. Did we lose a little bit?
I know the party was a bit much, but she's only turning 5 once, right? But for her 6th birthday party, she wants it on an actual spaceship.
I'm Amy McCready.
So it's a video you can find on YouTube. The one about the indulger is like everyone has an iPhone, and I buy my child the iPhone. And I can say that I've been guilty of those things as well as a parent. So I want to talk about the next slide because it sort of speaks a little bit to this video. So what we're talking about is that we want kids to develop as a person and see their own, like be able to build some self-efficacy, right? And confidence in themselves. And if they're always constantly being rescued or given things and they don't have to work for those things, or they can't problem solve themselves, like think about how could I problem solve that? And we consistently rescue them, we overindulge them, we are actually not helping them to grow into adults that can actually do these things for themselves. So we have to be really careful on the fine line of where we do too much, whereas as well as we want to give our children things that we didn't have, but doing too much can also hinder them and handicap them in other ways. So I think there's one more slide that goes with this one. I think, Rico, I added it in. Yeah, so this is an excerpt from the book, and I put it in here because I thought it'd be important that you can see that she wrote that this book is about not robbing our kids from their imagination and determination and their ability to think for themselves and do for themselves. We want to give everything to our kids that we didn't have, but at the cost of what? So we need to, again, balance that out as parents. And so with the teenage brain, always rescuing them isn't teaching them the self-efficacy that they need. So if you're struggling with this as yourself as a parent, I would highly recommend just taking this book. You can get it on Amazon. It's in a Kindle. You can do it on a paper book. And there's some really good videos online with Amy McCready, just kind of giving some more information. So do we have any questions that we want to add on the Q&A that somebody's brought up yet that we want to look at? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, we have one question. Yeah, there's a few right now. The first is,
okay.
If the children were introduced to cell early in life, preschool and primary, are they better at reading facial expressions on adults when they are teenagers?
That's a function of brain development. So the research that I was reading yesterday was that we do want to help children and teach them. So if you teach a child those skills, they will actually have them. But it's also a function of like, are they ready? Is their brain able to develop and think that way? Because they are still growing. And Rico will talk about it a bit more. When that prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed, so we can teach them things, but will they remember everything we've taught them as parents at that age? We can teach them kindness, though. Those compassion and kindness, which is different than face reading, can be taught and sort of stay with them longer. So that question, from reading the research that I had, didn't actually give the answer. So I'm wondering about myself, but I think that what we want to do is just really do teach our children skills so that it can stay with them. But I don't know if their brains are ready for all of that. Mm-hmm. Regarding giving the children more than we were given by our parents, how about giving more emotional support? Exactly. I really like that question. Thank you for putting that down. We tend to give more things rather than more of us, of our emotion. And so that is going to come up in this presentation a little bit later. So thank you for putting that down. That's great. Thank you. All right, let's skip to the next question or the next myth. I think we have one more. I cannot let my child fail. Okay, so failure will lower my child's confidence and self-esteem, having lasting negative effects. So let's go with the 30-second poll. And we'll see where we are. Okay, let's close that poll. All right, I cannot let my child fail. Let's see, false. Okay, great. So let's go with what the experts say. Here we go. So there's a few books about failure. I always call failure first attempt in learning, right? So when you think about fail, and you're thinking it's not a great thing, but it's really our first attempt in the learning that we're doing. Sometimes it can be multiple attempts, but we try and phrase it in a very positive way in education. So we allow children to fail and then they can recover. So giving children a chance to recover. So there's a book on the gift of failure. And so if you're interested in reading a little bit more about why it's important for children to fail, I'd recommend this book. And you can pick that up on Amazon as well, or in a book depository. Let's go to the next. I think there's one more. Yeah. The fear of failure, right, occurs. Parents like to step in and they like to rescue children often. I see that often. It's that the parents are hovering and just trying to rescue the child. It's okay to let kids fail, but they need to be able to recover. Meaning that if you let them fail, work with them to recover that failure. When there is no sense of recovery, then that hopelessness steps in, and that's where, as adults, even for us, it's difficult. So I've allowed my children to fail. It's hard. It's heartbreaking as a parent because you want to fix it, and my gut is I want to rescue and save my child, but I have allowed I've had the tears, I've had my children, my boys, but then when we recover, we make a plan of recovery together. So, I mean, I know I'm an educator and I do have experience, but that's kind of how I work with my boys. And it's devastating as a parent, and it's very hard to not rescue them. But I had to always step back and just say, okay, they have to fail. They will not build resiliency as adults if they do not fail and recover. So we have to allow those failures to happen. It's very important. So thank you, Rico. I may finish the polls now. Some more thoughts, okay, and just a few more things that this is from the book. So I'm hoping that you, if you really want to read about failure, that you read the book. It's quite good. But exactly as she says, trust your kids, okay? And when we say, let me do that for you, you're telling them they can't do it. I have 2 to 4-year-olds that put on that in the coat room in the morning, and I say, you can take off your jacket. Yes, you can. And then you can put your shoes away, and I let them do it. Yes, I could do it faster, but I need to allow them to do it. They need to feel, I said, you're such a, you're really doing a great job. And I remind them that they can do it, and they feel good about themselves. They smile and they want to do this stuff. So thank you so much for listening to this part of the presentation. And I'm always here to talk more about this. So, and then the last one, I guess, is this is a fact. It's not even a myth. It's not even a poll. Teens want their parents to know what they're thinking. They do. They really want you to be involved with them, to know who they are, and to be there for them. And I think that's one more, Rico. I'm not sure. Okay. So the last things, yeah, the teens. This is a really interesting list that came from expert research with teens. A couple of them is that teens want their parents to be proud of them. Teens care what you think. They really do. And they really do love you. And that's, sometimes it doesn't feel like it. My child is, how can they love me? Look how they're talking to me. They love you. They are talking to you like that because they're safe with you. They can unleash those feelings on you because they know that you are going to love them anyway. And when your child is acting perfect for strangers, because they don't know that stranger, they won't show that side of themselves, but they will to you when they show that, yeah, they'll unleash and they'll put all their emotions on the table, knowing you will love them anyway, regardless of all that emotional garbage that comes out sometimes, you're still love them. The one thing I thought was really interesting is that teens hate it when their parents fight. And I thought that was a really interesting, and it's true. And when you talk to teens, when I was a school counselor, that was the one part that my parents don't have time for me. My parents don't listen to me. I don't think my parents love me, and my parents fight. Those are the things that used to come up a lot with teens when I was counseling teens in Canada. So, and that they have a lot of stress in their lives that we don't think are stress, but they need help with that. They need help managing it, but they don't want you to rescue them. It's a really fine line. So thank you, Rico, and thank you everyone for listening. I think I'm finished on this section now. Right. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, T, for sharing all that information, especially with busting some myths and talking about what are the facts about a teen's brain. So probably a lot of you, at the moment having a teenager or preparing for your child turning into a teenager, a lot of you are wondering, okay, so I have all this information now. What do I actually do with it? How do I actually support my teen with it? And I'm going to talk a bit about the needs of the teenage brain. And before I do that, I do want to kind of dig a little deeper in terms of the brain development of adolescence. So what we're kind of looking here is that there's two parts to the main function of the brain for a teenager and adult. The prefrontal cortex, which is in the front over here, is responsible for interpreting and processing information. Anything that comes through, this is what the prefrontal cortex is for safety, the fight or flight. It's to interpret, process, dissect, analyze information that is coming into the brain. But it is also the last part that gets fully developed. It is also the part that takes the longest to develop for a teenager. What happens now is that the teenagers actually, because they have this, it's still developing. It's a long process. It gets developed the last, and it's responsible for logical and rational decisions. They rely much more on their amygdala, which is the processing of information and attributing emotion to a situation. So when you look at the two, which one takes precedent? It's the amygdala for the teenager. So they're not really processing the fact that, wow, jumping off a cliff or escaping house and going out at night is dangerous. They're focusing much more on the feeling, which is the amygdala, because their prefrontal cortex is still developing. So they weigh responsibility and consequences very differently than an adult. Adults, we rely much more on the prefrontal cortex because it's developed. So a lot of times they rely on their emotions, which explains the impulsivity of teenagers. It's fun. I'm going to do it. Okay. It feels good. I'm going to do it. The prefrontal cortex is kind of out of the question. Okay. So this is something key to remember about the teenage brain and where they are in the development. So what are the needs? So there are really 6 key needs of the teenage brain that we as adults need to be aware of. This is actually based on our school's international curriculum from the International Middle Years curriculum from Fieldwork Education. And there's 6 parts that a teenager needs. Interlinking learning, making meaning, their peers, agency, risk-taking, and transition. And I'm going to talk about each of these in further details. Okay, so making meaning. The first thing I want you to have a look at is actually what's going on in the brain. Okay, what's going on with these trillions of synapses, these neurological activity that T was talking about in the beginning. If you look at the picture over here, the diagram over here, from birth until 15 months until early childhood, the child is making connections and relevance to everything they see. So all these little connections you see here is actually the relevance, the meaning they make to things. Okay, so everything has meaning. Just crawling on the floor, eating a lemon. All of these things are being consolidated. Okay, so there's a lot of connections being made. However, when they start becoming older, they start becoming 6 years old, 14 years old, and then adults. They go through a phase called pruning. And what pruning means is basically breaking off these synapses, these neural connections that have no relevance. Okay? When they don't see a purpose or a consequence or an effect of something they do, there's no relevance to it. This is why it's so important to have an after effect. What's the consequence of doing one? Okay? Where's the accountability? This is why teens need accountability. Without accountability, these connections of, oh, we need to be organized and be on time. These goes out the window. All right. So they are consistently breaking off connections as they get older, keeping what they feel is meaningful. The science behind it. So here you can kind of look from age 5, there's a lot of brain activity going on. Okay. Lots of brain activity going on. But as we move through adolescence and into adulthood, like us, we don't have too much brain activity. We're very settled in our experiences. Our experiences shape who we are, right? So if you look at this process of how experiences give meaning or take away meaning, you can kind of see why adolescent it's so important to make meaning for them. Talk to them in a meaningful way. Be relevant to them. okay? Because they're going through a phase where they're cutting out anything that's not relevant, okay? And this is how their brain gets settled as they become adults. So a quick recap on just making meaning, right? Their brain discards things that are not relevant, and same with us as adults, okay? When they're able to make meaning to something, this is where the consolidation of learning and relationships stands, okay? And this is something you have to remember. Fun for adults is not necessarily the same for kids. What we find as, this is really fun, don't you like it? It might not be mutual. You have to remember that. And when it's not mutual, the meaning's out of the way. There's no connection there, okay? Okay, then we're gonna move on to interlinking learning, okay? So a lot of studies have shown that when we learn things, the brain compartmentalizes the different parts of the information and tries to associate them when they're recalled to, take it out again and process the information. Okay, so a lot of times the brain learns associatively, as the neuroscientists have found out. And this is why, especially in our curriculum, there's this interlinking of learning. This is why we chose the IPC and the IMYC, and all the way up to the programs we have basically focus a lot on interlinking learning. If you look at the IPC, the theme in the middle is dinosaur. And the dinosaur is kind of the binding agent, linking all of these subjects together, because we know this is how they learn best, based on science. And you can also see an example from IMYC, right? There's a big idea, this big theme in the middle that binds all the subjects together, okay? Because we know they learn best by association, okay? Being able to make relevance across departments and into the real world, okay? Importance of peers, okay? This is a tough one to swallow, parents. I hate to say it, but the peers have a lot more influence on your teenager child than you, okay? If you look at the last bullet point over there, Steinberg found out that the risk that teens take more than doubles in the presence of their peers. Whereas for adults, it doesn't have an impact, okay? Peer groups are so important to teens. It's how they craft their identity. It's how they find out who they are, find out what they like, what they don't like. It's really a key part of their formative development to becoming an adult, okay?
And I want to speak to that just 1 second before Rico goes. When you teach your child the right from wrong, you're constantly teaching them. Don't be surprised when your child chooses the wrong, because that happens. You know, I told you, you weren't supposed to do that. But that's not how it works for teens, right? And Rico talked about it. It felt right. I went with my friends. I went along with them. I knew it was wrong, but I still did it. And that's the conversation. It's not about punishing them. It's about having the conversation after. Okay, you chose this, but it wasn't what we had talked about. And you have to have a conversation about it, and not just like you're grounded, or I'm not talking to you. It's you need to talk. And those are the talking and opening points with kids, to have those conversations about how to grow that part of their brain.
Absolutely, the talking is so important, because you want to maintain that open communication. What you don't want is teens to cut off the communication with you. You do not want that. So, and we're going to give you one last tip before we finish at the end, and it's going to be a good one. Right, and as I said, the peers' influence really does take precedent over the adult's influence during this period, okay? And when we're kind of talking about how the brain works and so forth, and why they weigh consequences differently and risk, it goes back to what I was talking about, the fact that they rely much more on the amygdala, the processing and the attribution to emotion, compared to the prefrontal cortex. While, as I said, we may see jumping off a cliff as that's dangerous, all they're seeing is the association of the feeling. It's fun, it's exciting. I want to do things that make me feel good. I don't care about anything else. And this is why it's important, especially in school, at home, we have this safe environment for them to take risks, because the importance of them taking risks and making mistakes is crucial to their development to become resilient, okay? And our curriculum, especially with the exit points, that we have in IPC, IMYC, we really give this kind of safe environment for them to take a risk and do something that's out of the box and not traditional to education, because we want to be progressive and help them develop this and have a safe environment. Okay. Okay. Student agency. Student agency is really choice we're talking about, right? how often have we been told to do something and we didn't want to do it? A lot, I'm sure, as adults as well. You know, you had your boss to tell you to do something, you don't want to do it, right? Or you had your, your partner or kids or whatever, right? Having that choice, having that agency to make choices that directly impact their own well-being and daily lives is really a key point for development in terms of teenagers. So a lot of times I really try to stress the fact that teenagers, they want to be adults, okay? We really have to make an effort to treat them like adults, give them the opportunities to make choices themselves, but also remember that they are still teenagers and they are still minors. We still have to keep this in mind. So it's this very balancing act of, I'm going to make them feel like an adult, but I know deep down, I still have to understand that this is a child we're talking about. We have to be wary of certain things. So giving them that choice, having a say, and having that open discourse, that open discussion is important for them to feel that they have an impact on their own lives. Okay. And one of the last things we're going to talk about is a transition to primary to secondary. This is always a huge and big change, especially when kids move from year 6 to year 7. Okay. In primary, you can kind of see there's one class teacher. That teacher is responsible for a lot of the core subjects, right? You have one teacher. Of course, we know they're specialists, and the primary homeroom teacher kind of has the main expectations, main procedures, and so forth that they follow. And then suddenly they move into secondary. They have 10 different teachers, perhaps a lot of different expectations, different types of teachers, different styles of teacher, different subjects, and so forth. It is a very difficult transition for them, which is why another topic we're going to come up with is actually one of our future webinars is talking about the transition from primary to secondary. How do we bridge that gap from transitioning to primary to secondary? T and I will lead the webinar on this in the future. And we'll talk more about this in those webinars. So this is also another key area that we're going to talk a lot more about. This is a whole webinar on its own. Okay. So what's our last tip for you for middle school, high school, teenager parents? You need to always listen to them without judgment. You need to keep that open communication. Okay. The riskiest and most dangerous thing you can do as a parent is to cut off that communication and they stop sharing things with you because they are worried that I'm going to get in trouble. We're going to talk about it and there will be consequences, but we need to have an honest and frank discussion so we're able to have these lessons, keep that communication open. T, I don't know if you want to jump in a little on that.
I was just going to jump in a little bit about that because, of course I had boys and I actually also raised my niece as well. So I had a girl. And, I just never act surprised. I would always ask them questions and they would, if they came to me with things, I would never go, oh, I would just be like, oh, wow, and I would come up with, and I would tell stories in order to get them to talk. And I would make up stories like, oh, when I was a teen, this is what happened. And I knew that something was happening. My friend's boyfriend broke up with her and he, there's, and then my sons would go, yeah, mom, that happened. That happened to one of my friends. And I'd say, oh, wow, well, what happened? And so I'd make up stories. I would just talk to them. I would never be surprised. And I just had open communication. Now, some things are embarrassing to talk about with kids, but we have to find a way to talk to them about it. Or if you have another trusted adult in your life that can talk to your child about things that maybe you're feeling embarrassed about. But there are lots of opportunities and I've never, I can honestly say I've never said to my sons, you're grounded, go to, but I have said, I'm disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in the actions that you took. We need to talk about this later. And then my youngest son and my oldest one, but my youngest one particularly, he said, Mom, I think this should be my consequence. And they're often harder on themselves than you would be. You'd be surprised. And I'd say, I'm so disappointed. This is what happened. I think we need to talk about this later. We talk about it. I'd say, we have to make this right. And there needs to be a consequence. What should it be? And my children always give harder ones. And sometimes I had to say, okay, hang on, that's a little bit of that's consequences pretty steep. Let's go, how about this? And my son would go, okay. So, one time was about the computer. I think I should use my computer for a month. I said, well, how about a week? Okay, well, that's better. So there's always a chance to have this dialogue and allow your children in. I never said that I wouldn't set the consequences. I'd say, here's an opportunity. What should the consequence be for this behavior? And it was always related to what they did. It was never taking the computer away because he didn't pick up his clothes. He went on a website that and that he shouldn't have gone on. And he realized that, oh, I didn't know, and that was inappropriate. And I said that was highly inappropriate, and I think it was a gaming site. And I said, so what should we do about that? So we had a long conversation about where that can lead to and what the kind of people that are out there, and we did a lot of research. So this is a good dialogue with kids. So just be creative, find ways, just always be loving at the end of it. I love you and thank you for the conversation, because it's so important that they know you love them, and that no matter what happens, you're there for them, and that you will always, love them regardless of the horrible stories or the things they've done. You're just their parent and you love them. So most important thing to say to your kids every day. So I think that, Rico, I think on the next slide, I did put a video, which maybe we could put the link into the chat, because we can't play it. And I did put it, that is actually a link to a website. So I think that it'd be nice to put those links in the chat before we if you can, I'm not sure if you can. And for parents to look at the video about the teenage brain can link you to more videos. And I thought it was a good one. So I think Rico's just going to link those for you. We'll keep the chat open for another 2 minutes so you can take those links off of the chat site. And thank you so much. If there's any more questions, I think that there was a question by, giving, somebody was asking about, can we get some of those links? And yes, we will send them to you right now on the chat. I think, Rico, you put them in already?
I put the videos of previous webinars are attached in our newsletters from primary, secondary, and full school. So
right.
you'll have a whole bank of the VLP series.
And the last video if you look at the website, Rico just linked a YouTube video on the teenage brain that I put on the last slide. So if you go into the chat, you can pull that link off, and then you can, if you click on it, you can actually open it and put it on your desktop for now and keep it there. How do we set limits without eternal fights? These are, this is where, as parents, it's interesting. This is a very good conversation. I know with my kids, I didn't yell, but when I said, I mean it, my boys took me seriously. So it's really in how we set our intention with our children, and follow through is key. So if you're going to set limits, you need to follow through with kids. Like, you can't say, I mean it, I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm going to do it. And then you never do anything. If I said, like I said, my son slammed his door. I said, do not slam your door. He was 11. He slammed his door. I said, the next time you slam that door is coming off. Slam. Door came off. I said, for a week. And then and it was not pleasant. He ripped his room apart. He was upset. He was so mad. And I said, that's fine. You're going to clean this room up, but the door is still off. A week later, the door went back on. Slam. I said, if that door slams again, it's coming off again for a week. It slammed. It came off for another week. He took me seriously. We put it back on a week later, and I said, if this door slams again, you will not have a door or have privacy. It never slammed again. I followed through, but it was hard on me. Like, I was angry inside, and it was a lot as a parent. So whatever you do, you need to follow through and show your children that you're serious, because it does teach them the consequences, and they need to have that learning from us. I'm not a perfect parent. I made lots of mistakes, but there are times when I recognize that I always followed through, and that really helped. And when I talk to my kids now as young adults, they said, Mom, you never yelled, but you really did mean things when you said them. And I went, yes, I did. And I followed through. And as teachers, we have to follow through as well. So I know it's not easy. We're going to make lots of mistakes as parents, but having a nice community to talk to, getting online and looking through some really great parenting videos. I did a lot of research as a parent. I never just relied on my instincts. I also had to go on and read, what should I do? My child is, and I'd have to read about some ideas. So don't be afraid to reach out and read some books. It's really important that, no manual as a parent was I given. So, and I know it's a bit easier when you're a teacher, because you do work with kids and you do have more experience, but I'd say read a lot. Rico, any more questions that came up? Can't copy from the chat. Okay. If you just click on the link, you might be able to do it. So thank you everyone for coming today. We'll say goodbye, and we'll stay on for a few minutes if you want to just put a few more questions in. We'll try and answer. We're here at the school. We'd love to talk to you. If you want to make an appointment and you have specific concerns about your child, we're always here for you. We have a school counselor, Miss Alinka, and we have a school student support teacher, Miss Monica, who can also help. So I hope that you got something from this today, and that you're able to take a little bit away, just a little bit. So thank you all. We'll give you another minute to pull those links off if you want. All right.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
We hope
you.
find
Thank you,
here.
everyone.
Take care.
All right.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.